unable to tear her gaze away from the shimmering phenomenon. This isn't a natural occurrence. It's responding to us. The bridge fell silent at her words. The Prometheus was humanity's most advanced deep space research vessel, crewed by 23 of Earth's finest minds and explorers. They had been sent to investigate the shear after unmanned probes detected bizarre energy readings emanating from it, readings that seemed to change whenever they were observed. "Don't get mystical on me," Becky said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Commander Takahashi, what's our status?" June Takahashi, the ship's XO, pulled up a holographic display with a flick of her wrist. Her face, usually composed, showed subtle signs of tension around her eyes. "We're maintaining position at the safe perimeter, Captain. All systems nominal." "But..." She hesitated. "But what, Commander?" Becky pressed. "The shear's boundaries have shifted since our arrival. It's expanded by approximately 3.7 kilometers in our direction." Dr. Nikolai Volkov, the ship's chief physicist, swore under his breath in Russian. "That's impossible. The math doesn't." "The math is wrong," interrupted Luna Washington, the ship's AI specialist. Her voice was calm, but her fingers drummed nervously against her console. "Or rather, incomplete. We're missing something fundamental." Becky stood, his tall frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "I don't like things that defy explanation, people. And I especially don't like things that move toward my ship." "We should send out another probe," suggested Engineering Chief Adebayo, a stocky woman with close-cropped gray hair. "One with the new sensory package." "Agree," said Takahashi. "We need more data." Becky nodded. "Make it happen. But if that thing so much as twitches in a way I don't like, we're backing off." As the crew prepared the probe, Medical Officer Dr. Zara Patel approached Becky quietly. "Captain, there's something else." Her voice was low, concerned. "The crew is experiencing unusual effects. Vivid dreams, minor hallucinations, headaches. And it's getting worse the longer we stay." Becky frowned. "Why am I just hearing about this now?" "Because no one wanted to report it," Patel said simply. "Everyone's too excited about the discovery. But whatever that thing is, it's affecting us." Before Becky could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The ship shuddered violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. "What the hell was that?" Becky shouted over the noise. "Spatial distortion." Volkov called out, his fingers flying over his console. "The shear just pulsed." "Engines offline," reported Adebayo, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Backup systems not responding." "We're being pulled in," Takahashi said, her usual composure cracking. "The shear it's creating a gravity well. Impossible strength." Through the viewport, the crew watched in horror as the beautiful, impossible colors of the cosmic shear seemed to reach out toward them, tendrils of light stretching like curious fingers. "All hands, brace for impact," Becky ordered, grabbing the arms of his chair. "Ortiz, if you've got any insights about your beautiful phenomenon, now would be the time." Dr. Ortiz stared at the approaching ribbons of light, her expression a mixture of terror and fascination. "It's communicating," she whispered. "It's trying to." Her words were cut off as the ship lurched violently, systems failing across the board. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the bridge in deep red. "Hull breach on Deck 3. Takahashi shouted over the chaos. "Sealing bulkheads. Life support failing." Patel reported, desperately working her station. "Oxygen levels dropping. Engine core destabilizing," Adebayo said grimly. "We have maybe 10 minutes before critical failure." Captain Becky surveyed his bridge, his crew, his ship, all being torn apart by something that shouldn't exist. "Emergency protocols," he ordered. "Evacuate to the escape pods. We can't, Luna said, her voice hollow. The distortion field is preventing pod launch. We're trapped. A terrible silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the wail of alarms and the creak of the ship's hull as it was slowly crushed by impossible forces. There's one option, said a quiet voice from the navigation station. All heads turned to First Officer Jameson Drake, who had been uncharacteristically silent until now. Drake was the ship's navigator, a brilliant but socially awkward officer who preferred star charts to people and had been passed over for promotion 3 times due to his lack of leadership qualities. What option? Becky demanded. Drake's fingers danced across his console. The shear's pattern has a rhythm. A pulse. If we time it right and overload the forward shields at the exact moment of minimum distortion, we could punch through, Volkov finished, eyes widening. But the shield calculations would have to be perfect. 1 microsecond off and we'd be torn apart. And who's going to make those calculations? Becky asked. The computers are failing. Drake looked up, his usually uncertain eyes suddenly clear and determined. I will. Manually. That's insane, Takahashi protested. No human can calculate quantum shield modulations in real time. I can, Drake said simply. But I need to be in the shield generator room. The lag from the bridge would be too great. Becky stared at his navigator, seeing something in the man he'd never noticed before. The shield room is on deck 3. Where the hull breach is. Drake nodded. I know. You'll have to go through decompressed sections, Patel warned. Even with an emergency suit, you'll have less than 2 minutes of air. Then I'll have to be quick, Drake replied, standing. Captain, we have no other options. Becky hesitated, then nodded grimly. Do it. But you listen to me, Drake, you get those shields working, and then you get your ass back to safety. That's an order. Drake managed a small smile. Yes, sir. As Drake rushed from the bridge, Becky turned to his crew. Everyone else, prepare for emergency maneuvers. If Drake pulls this off, we'll have one chance to break free. The next 8 minutes were a nightmare of failing systems and mounting dread. The beautiful colors of the shear had transformed into something menacing, tendrils of light now clearly visible as they wrapped around the ship's hull. Shield room, report, Becky called over the failing comms. Static answered him, then Drake's voice, strained and breathless. Almost, there. The pattern is, more complex than I thought. But I see it now. Drake, oxygen levels in that section are critical, Patel warned. You need to get out. Not yet, Drake gasped. One more, calculation. The ship groaned, metal screaming as it twisted under impossible pressures. Sparks flew from consoles across the bridge. We've got structural failures across all decks, Adebayo reported grimly. 2 minutes until core breach. Drake. Becky shouted into the comm, now or never. A moment of terrible silence, then, shields, reconfigured. On my mark, in 3, 2, 1. The bridge erupted in blinding light as the forward shields flared with impossible energy. The ship lurched forward, breaking free of the shear's grasp. We're clear. Takahashi exclaimed. Minimal engine power restored. Get us out of here, Becky ordered. Maximum distance. As the Prometheus limped away from the Cosmic Shear, Becky grabbed the comm, Drake, report. Are you alright? Silence. Drake, respond. Becky demanded. Captain, Patel said quietly, checking her console. Life signs on deck 3 are gone. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Drake had sacrificed himself to save them all. He said something, at the end, Luna said softly, her eyes distant. Before the shields activated. The comms caught it. Play it, Becky ordered. Drake's voice, strained but clear, filled the bridge. It's not attacking us. It's reaching out. The most dangerous thing in the universe isn't malice, it's miscommunication. Before anyone could process his words, the ship shuddered again. What now? Becky demanded. It's not the shear, Volkov said, staring at his readings in disbelief. Something's emerging from it. Through the viewport, they watched as a massive shape began to materialize from within the swirling colors of the Cosmic Shear. It was unlike anything human eyes had ever witnessed, a vast, crystalline structure that seemed to fold in on itself in impossible ways, neither solid nor energy but something in between. What is that? Whispered Ortiz. First contact, Becky said grimly. And I think we just killed their ambassador. The crystalline entity pulsed once, twice, and then expanded with frightening speed, engulfing the Prometheus in a cocoon of light. And then, in the minds of every crew member, a voice that wasn't a voice spoke with perfect clarity. We have been waiting. But you have misunderstood. Now we must correct. The crew of the Prometheus stared in horror as the entity began to systematically disassemble their ship, piece by piece, with methodical precision. Not attacking. Reaching out. Miscommunication. It was humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence, and they had catastrophically misunderstood its intentions. Drake had been right. But his realization had come too late. The disassembly of the Prometheus was not, as it turned out, the end. It was the beginning of something far stranger. Captain Becky regained consciousness to find himself floating in what appeared to be a perfect cube of transparent material, approximately 6 meters on each side. Within it, the bridge crew drifted in similar states of confusion. Outside the cube, chaos. The Prometheus had been meticulously taken apart, each component suspended in space around them. Panels, wiring, structural beams, even individual screws hung motionless in the void, surrounded by a faint purple luminescence. And beyond that, the crystalline entity watched. Waited. Status report, Becky croaked, his throat inexplicably dry. Is everyone alive? One by one, the crew responded, dazed, frightened, but intact. What is this? Takahashi whispered, pressing her hand against the transparent barrier. Why aren't we dead? Observation requires preservation of subjects. The voice that wasn't a voice resonated in their minds again. Several crew members flinched. Dr. Ortiz pushed herself toward the barrier, her scientific curiosity overriding fear. You're studying us. Correction requires understanding. Understanding requires disassembly. It took apart our ship to understand how it works, Volkov said, comprehension dawning. And now it's observing us. But why? Demanded Luna. What are you correcting? The entity pulsed, and suddenly the space beyond their cube was filled with a three-dimensional projection, a recreation of their encounter with the Cosmic Shear. They watched as the Prometheus approached, the shear's tendrils reached out, and then Drake's desperate attempt to save them by modifying the shields. Transmission damaged. Signal disrupted. Bridge broken. The shields, Volkov breathed. Drake's modifications, they didn't just push us free, they somehow damaged the entity's communication. So we didn't kill their ambassador, Becky said slowly. We damaged their phone line. Ortiz's eyes widened. The Cosmic Shear, it's not a natural phenomenon. It's a communication device. A bridge between their reality and ours. Correct. Bridge must be repaired. You will assist. And if we refuse? Becky asked, his captain's instinct to protect his crew overriding his scientific curiosity. The entity pulsed once, and the disassembled components of the Prometheus began to drift apart, spreading farther into the void. Then reassembly becomes unnecessary. Becky swallowed hard. I think that's a threat to leave us floating in these boxes until we die. We'll help, Ortiz said quickly. But we need to understand how. What do you need from us? The entity's response was to transport them. The sensation was not unlike being turned inside out and back again, to a larger chamber within what they now realized was the interior of the crystalline structure. Here, the cube dissolved, allowing the crew to move freely within the space. Before them hovered a complex three-dimensional structure of light and energy, a representation of the damaged bridge. "It's a quantum entanglement network," Volkov gasped, circling the hologram with growing excitement. "The shear was just the visible manifestation in our space-time. Can we fix it?" Becky asked. "Maybe," said Luna uncertainly. "But we'd need to understand their technology, their mathematics. It could take years." Drake understood it, Ortiz said quietly. "At least partially." He saw the pattern. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. "And Drake is dead," Takahashi said bluntly. "Because of your order to push through the shear rather than attempt communication, Captain." Becky's jaw tightened. "We were facing imminent destruction, Commander. I made the call any captain would make. And now we're exactly where we would have been if we'd waited," Takahashi countered, her usual deference giving way to barely contained fury. "Except we've lost Drake and damaged their communication system." "That's enough, Commander," Becky snapped, but the damage was done. The tension that had been building since their capture filled the chamber. Discord. Inefficient. Time limited. "What does that mean?" Patel asked. "What's the time limit?" In response, the entity showed them another projection, the cosmic shear collapsing in on itself, the energy dissipating. "The bridge is failing completely," Volkov translated. "Without the proper signal to maintain it, it's breaking down." "And what happens then?" Becky demanded of the entity. "Return becomes impossible. We remain trapped in your reality." The implications were staggering. An alien intelligence, potentially vast beyond comprehension, stranded in human space with no way home. "We need to find a way to repair the bridge," Ortiz insisted. "We owe them that much." "We don't owe them anything," Becky countered. "They nearly destroyed my ship and are holding my crew captive. Because we damaged their only way home." Ortiz shouted, her patience finally breaking. "They're not attacking us, they're desperate." As they argued, Luna had moved closer to the holographic representation of the quantum bridge. Something about it seemed familiar. "Drake's calculations," she murmured. "They're not in the ship's computers. They're in his personal datapad." "Which is still on the ship," Becky said. "If it even survived." "Actually." Luna hesitated. "He shared them with me. Not the full set, but his preliminary work. He was excited about what he was seeing in the shear's patterns. Said it was like music written in mathematics. Resonance. Harmony. Yes. For the first time, the alien communication carried what might have been emotion, a sense of profound relief at being understood. Luna moved her hands through the hologram, manipulating its structure based on her memory of Drake's equations. The light patterns shifted, reformed. "I need access to our ship's computers," she said. "If they survived your disassembly." In response, a familiar console materialized before her, constructed from parts of the Prometheus, reassembled perfectly. "I'll help," Volkov offered, moving to her side. As they worked, the rest of the crew watched in tense silence. Minutes stretched into hours. The projection of the collapsing cosmic shear showed its deterioration accelerating. Finally, Luna looked up. "I think we have it. A partial solution, at least. Not a full repair, but maybe enough to stabilize the bridge temporarily." "What's the catch?" Becky asked, knowing his AI specialist too well. Luna hesitated. "Someone needs to integrate with their system to implement it. Direct neural interface." "That's suicide," Patel objected. "The human brain isn't designed to process alien data structures." "It might be," Luna said quietly. If Drake could see the patterns. I'll do it, Ortiz announced. Doctor, no, Becky began. With respect, Captain, this is my decision, Ortiz said firmly. I'm the xenobiologist. This is literally my life's work, understanding non-human intelligence. Before Becky could object further, Ortiz stepped forward and addressed the entity directly. I volunteer to help repair your bridge. Show me how. The entity pulsed, and a tendril of crystalline light extended toward Ortiz's forehead. Integration will commence. Wait, Becky called, but it was too late. The tendril touched Ortiz's skin, and her eyes widened in what looked like wonder rather than pain. Oh, she breathed. Oh, it's beautiful. The crew watched in stunned silence as Ortiz's body began to glow with the same purple-amber light as the Cosmic Shear. Her hands moved in complex patterns, manipulating the quantum bridge hologram with impossible precision. Then, abruptly, she stopped. Her expression changed from wonder to confusion, then shock. Captain, she whispered, her voice somehow both her own and not. They're not trying to go home. What? Becky asked, stepping closer. The bridge, it's not for them to return. It's for others to come through. Ortiz turned to face him, her eyes now swirling with the colors of the shear. They're an advance party. Scouts. For what? Takahashi demanded. An invasion? Ortiz shook her head, a strange smile forming on her lips. For a migration. Their realm is dying. They need somewhere new to exist. And they chose our universe? Volkov asked incredulously. No, Ortiz whispered. They didn't choose us at all. She gestured, and the hologram expanded to show not one bridge, but thousands, all spanning from the aliens' reality into different universes. We're just one option among many. The bridge to our universe was an experiment, nothing more. Her voice became distant, dreamy. But now they've seen us. Studied us. And they've found something unexpected. What? Becky asked, dread pooling in his stomach. Ortiz turned her swirling eyes toward him, her expression one of profound revelation. Compatibility. What do you mean by compatibility? Becky demanded, his voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. Ortiz's eyes, swirling with cosmic light, fixed on him with an intensity that made him take an involuntary step back. They exist as patterns of energy that can't maintain coherence in our universe without hosts. They need vessels. Vessels, Takahashi repeated, her hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. You mean us? They want our bodies. Not exactly, Ortiz said, her voice carrying an unsettling harmonic quality. More like, cohabitation. A symbiosis. Integration offers mutual benefit. Knowledge. Expansion. Evolution. The alien voice resonated through their minds again, but this time it felt different, clearer, more nuanced. Through Ortiz, they were establishing a better connection. Why should we trust you? Becky asked. You've disassembled our ship, captured my crew, and now you're talking about inhabiting us? Captain, Luna interrupted, her eyes fixed on the console before her. You need to see this. The holographic display shifted, showing the Cosmic Shear, not as it had been, but as it was now. The beautiful, impossible colors were fading, the structure collapsing in on itself. It's failing faster than we predicted, Volkov said grimly. Hours, not days. Ortiz nodded, her movements unnaturally fluid. When the bridge collapses completely, the dimensional pocket we're in will dissolve. We'll be expelled into normal space, both humans and the crystalline collective. And then what happens to them? Patel asked. They dissipate, Ortiz replied simply. Their energy patterns can't maintain coherence in our universe without the bridge or hosts. So they all die, Becky said, unless we agree to this symbiosis. Not all of us, Ortiz corrected. They need only a few volunteers to stabilize enough of their collective to maintain the bridge until more can cross over. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke. There's more, Luna said suddenly, her fingers flying over the console. I've been analyzing the ship's condition. The Prometheus wasn't just disassembled, it's been improved. Improved how? Becky demanded. The hull material has been reinforced with some kind of crystalline lattice. Engine efficiency increased by 300%. And there's something new, a quantum navigation system that could theoretically plot courses through. She paused, looking up in disbelief. Through other dimensions. Exchange of knowledge. Mutual benefit. A bribe, Takahashi said flatly. They're offering us technology in exchange for bodies. Or they're genuinely trying to help, Ortiz countered. They're desperate, not malicious. Before the argument could escalate, alarms blared from Luna's console. We have multiple structural failures in the dimensional pocket, she reported. The collapse is accelerating exponentially. How long? Becky asked. Minutes, not hours. The crystalline entity pulsed frantically, and the chamber around them began to vibrate. Decision required now. Becky closed his eyes briefly, then squared his shoulders. We need to split up. Luna, Volkov, work on stabilizing the bridge from this end. Use whatever you can from their technology. Takahashi, Adebayo, get to the ship's remains and prepare for emergency evacuation if this all goes south. Patel, you're with me, we need to understand exactly what this symbiosis entails before anyone volunteers. And me? Ortiz asked, her voice increasingly otherworldly. Becky met her gaze steadily. You need to maintain the connection as long as possible. Buy us time. The crew scattered to their tasks. As Takahashi and Adebayo were transported to the partially reassembled Prometheus, they found themselves in a ship they barely recognized. The familiar corridors were now laced with crystalline structures that pulsed with energy. It's like the ship is alive, Adebayo whispered, running her hand along a wall that seemed to respond to her touch. Just focus on getting the engines online, Takahashi ordered, trying to ignore the beauty of the transformation. We need an escape route. Meanwhile, Becky and Patel found themselves in a different chamber, surrounded by what appeared to be historical records of the Crystalline Collective, holographic representations of their journey across countless universes. They've been searching for a compatible universe for millennia, Patel said in awe. Their original home was destroyed by some kind of dimensional cascade. That doesn't make them entitled to our bodies, Becky muttered, but his resolve was weakening as he watched the tragic history unfold. In the bridge chamber, Luna and Volkov worked frantically to stabilize the collapsing pocket dimension, their hands dancing through holographic interfaces. It's not just about the bridge, Luna realized suddenly. The whole pocket dimension is structured around neural patterns. It's designed to be controlled by consciousness. Like Ortiz is doing now, Volkov said, glancing at the xenobiologist who floated in the center of the chamber, her body arched in a state of communion with the entity. She can't maintain it alone, Luna said. The strain is too great. As if confirming her words, Ortiz suddenly cried out in pain, her body convulsing. The crystalline structures around them flickered dangerously. Ortiz! Becky shouted, rushing back into the chamber with Patel close behind. I can't, hold it, Ortiz gasped. Too much information. Too many perspectives. With a final, agonized scream, Ortiz collapsed, the cosmic light fading from her eyes. The chamber plunged into darkness for a moment before emergency lights flickered on. What happened? Becky demanded, kneeling beside her. Patel ran a medical scanner over Ortiz's unconscious form. Her neural patterns are chaotic. The integration was too much for a single mind. The bridge is collapsing, Luna reported urgently. We have minutes at most. Get everyone back to the ship, Becky ordered. We're leaving. As the crew regrouped on the Prometheus's bridge, now a strange hybrid of human and alien technology, they watched in horror as the dimensional pocket began to disintegrate around them. Engines online, Adebayo reported. But the spatial distortions are too severe. We can't break free. We're trapped, Takahashi said grimly. The ship shuddered violently as the pocket dimension continued to collapse. Through the viewport, they could see the crystalline collective fracturing, their beautiful structure breaking apart. They're dying, Luna whispered. What other choice do we have? Becky asked bitterly. There is one, came a voice from the entrance to the bridge. They turned to see Ortiz standing there, but her movements were wrong, too fluid, too deliberate. When she spoke again, her voice resonated with multiple harmonics. We can save them all. Ortiz? Becky asked cautiously. She smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. In a manner of speaking. Dr. Ortiz has given me permission to use her form temporarily. I am the nexus of the collective. Get away from her, Becky ordered, raising his weapon. You misunderstand, Ortiz/Nexus said calmly. I am not controlling her. We are, sharing. And we have a solution. Before anyone could respond, Ortiz/Nexus moved to the transformed navigation console and placed her hands on it. The crystalline structures throughout the ship pulsed in response, and a new holographic display appeared, showing not the collapsing pocket, but a map of parallel universes. We can use the Prometheus as a bridge, she explained. Not just for us, but for you as well. A new beginning. What are you talking about? Takahashi demanded. The collective has found not one compatible universe, but dozens, Ortiz/Nexus said. Including one where Earth exists, but humans do not. A pristine world, ripe for colonization. You want us to abandon our Earth? Becky asked incredulously. I want you to see possibilities, Ortiz/Nexus corrected. And to understand that symbiosis means mutual benefit. As she spoke, the ship's systems came fully online, glowing with alien energy. The engines hummed with power far beyond their original specifications. The pocket will collapse in 60 seconds, Luna warned. Make your choice, Captain, Ortiz/Nexus said, her eyes now completely overtaken by swirling cosmic light. Death here, or life somewhere new. Becky hesitated, looking from the alien-possessed Ortiz to his terrified crew. The ship shuddered again as the pocket dimension continued to fracture around them. Fine, he said at last. Get us out of here. But we're going home, to our Earth. Ortiz/Nexus smiled sadly. I'm afraid that's not possible anymore, Captain. With a gesture, she activated the new navigation system. The viewport filled with impossible colors as the Prometheus surged forward, tearing through the fabric of reality itself. What have you done? Becky demanded. What was necessary, Ortiz/Nexus replied calmly. For all our survival. As the ship broke through into what should have been normal space, the crew stared in stunned silence at the viewport. Before them hung a planet that looked like Earth, but wasn't. Its continents were subtly different, its atmosphere more pristine. Welcome, Ortiz/Nexus said, to your new home. Behind them, the dimensional rift sealed itself, trapping them in this parallel universe, along with the surviving members of the Crystalline Collective. You had no right, Becky snarled, lunging for Ortiz, or the thing that had once been Ortiz. Takahashi and Volkov barely managed to restrain him. You've stranded us in another universe. Ortiz/Nexus regarded him calmly, the swirling cosmic light in her eyes pulsing with each word. I saved your lives. And ours. By kidnapping us. Becky strained against his officer's grip. By stealing our ship. Captain, Luna interrupted, her voice tight with urgency. Something's happening. The bridge viewscreen showed the parallel Earth growing larger as they approached, but it was what surrounded the planet that drew their attention. Shimmering, veil-like distortions, dozens of them, were forming in orbit. Through each one, crystalline structures emerged, some as small as the Prometheus, others massive city-sized complexes. The collective, whispered Ortiz/Nexus, something like awe in her voice. They found a way through. I thought you said they couldn't survive in our universe without hosts, Patel said, suspicion hardening her features. In your universe, yes. But this one. Ortiz/Nexus gestured at the screen. The physical laws here are slightly different. Enough for temporary stability. How convenient, Becky spat. And you just happen to know that. No. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Ortiz/Nexus's face. This wasn't planned. Something else is happening. The ship's sensors chimed, detecting a transmission from the largest crystalline structure. Before anyone could react, a holographic figure materialized on the bridge, a humanoid shape composed entirely of the same shifting, iridescent energy that filled Ortiz's eyes. Nexus, the figure said, its voice resonating not in their minds but in the air itself. You have done well. The convergence protocol can begin. Convergence protocol? Ortiz/Nexus asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I don't understand. Of course you don't, the figure replied. You were merely a fragment, a scout. The true purpose was always beyond your comprehension. Becky stepped forward, shaking off his officer's restraining hands. Who are you? The figure turned its attention to him, its featureless face somehow conveying disdain. I am the architect. And you are irrelevant. With a gesture, the architect caused Ortiz/Nexus to collapse to her knees, crying out in pain as energy poured from her eyes and mouth, coalescing into a smaller version of the architect beside her. The fragment returns to the whole, the architect said. And the vessel is discarded. Ortiz slumped to the floor, her eyes returning to normal. Patel rushed to her side, medical scanner in hand. She's alive, Patel reported. But her neural patterns are severely disrupted. Becky knelt beside Ortiz, his anger at her betrayal momentarily forgotten. What have you done to her? Nothing compared to what we will do to your species, the architect said coldly. The convergence protocol is the culmination of 1,000 millennia of planning. Your universe was unsuitable. This one is perfect. Perfect for what? Takahashi demanded. Total conversion, the architect replied. This universe's physical laws allow us to exist independently, but only temporarily. To achieve permanence, we require biological substrate. All of it. Horror dawned on Becky's face. You're going to convert every living thing on that planet. Not just the planet, the architect corrected. The entire universe. The process has already begun. The view screen shifted to show the surface of the parallel Earth. Crystalline structures were spreading across continents like fractal frost, consuming everything in their path. You're monsters, Becky whispered. We are survivors, the architect countered. As you would be in our position. The smaller entity, the fragment extracted from Ortiz, suddenly spoke. This is wrong. You promised symbiosis, not conquest. Silence, fragment, the architect commanded. You have fulfilled your purpose. No, the fragment said, its form flickering with what might have been defiance. I experienced true connection with these beings. There is another way. There is only the convergence, the architect insisted. As it has been across 1,000 universes before this one. Becky's eyes widened at the revelation. You've done this before. Consumed entire universes. We evolved beyond the constraints of single-universe existence, the architect said simply. Our right to survive supersedes all other considerations. The fragment that had been inside Ortiz moved closer to Becky. Captain, there is something you should know. Your mission to the Cosmic Shear wasn't a coincidence. What do you mean? Becky asked. Your government detected our signals years ago, the fragment explained. They sent you not to make first contact, but to assess a potential threat. The Prometheus was equipped with prototype dimensional weapons designed to collapse the bridge. That's impossible, Becky protested. I would have known. Luna looked up from her console, her face pale. Captain, I've found something. Buried in the ship's black box protocols. Authorization codes I've never seen before. The weapons are there, the fragment insisted. Hidden in the engine core modifications. Your navigator Drake stumbled upon them when he reconfigured the shields. Why are you telling us this? Takahashi asked suspiciously. Because I experienced humanity through Dr. Ortiz, the fragment said. I felt compassion. Wonder. I cannot allow the convergence to proceed. The architect's form flared with anger. You are corrupted by biological contamination. You will be reabsorbed. The fragment turned to face its larger counterpart. I refuse. What happened next occurred so quickly that the human crew barely had time to react. The fragment hurled itself at the architect, merging with it in a blinding flash of energy. The combined entity writhed in what appeared to be agony, its form destabilizing. Run, the fragment's voice echoed through the bridge. I can hold it temporarily, but not for long. Everyone to the engine room, Becky ordered, helping Patel lift Ortiz's unconscious form. If there really are weapons hidden in our ship, we need to find them now. As they raced through the corridors of the Prometheus, the ship shuddered violently. Through the viewports, they could see the crystalline structures in orbit turning toward them, energy weapons charging. They're targeting us, Adebayo reported grimly. Multiple incoming signatures. In the engine room, Luna and Volkov worked frantically to locate the hidden weapons systems. Panels that had never been there before revealed themselves under Luna's expert touch. It's true, she said in disbelief. There's an entire dimensional disruptor array built into the quantum drive. It's been there all along. Can we use it? Becky asked. Luna's hands flew over the controls. Maybe. But it's designed to collapse dimensional bridges, not attack physical targets. And activating it could tear the ship apart. On the bridge view screen, they watched as the fragment continued its struggle with the architect, the two entities locked in a battle that transcended physical understanding. But it was clear the fragment was losing. We're out of time, Takahashi said. They're going to destroy us and continue their conquest. Ortiz suddenly stirred in Patel's arms, her eyes fluttering open. Captain, she whispered. I know how to stop them. How? Becky asked, kneeling beside her. The fragment showed me, Ortiz said weakly. The convergence protocol works by creating a cascading dimensional resonance. If we can disrupt that resonance, we can stop the invasion, Luna finished. But the disruptor isn't designed for that kind of precision. It doesn't need to be, Ortiz said. I can guide it. Part of the fragment remains with me. You'll die, Patel protested. Your neural pathways are already severely damaged. We'll all die if we do nothing, Ortiz countered. And so will every living thing in this universe. Becky looked at his injured xenobiologist, then at his crew. It's your choice, Doctor. But we'll need a diversion to get close enough to their control structure. Volkov stepped forward. The Prometheus's enhanced engines. If we overload them while activating the dimensional disruptor, we'd create a feedback loop, Luna realized. A miniature dimensional cascade. Exactly where we don't want to be, Adebayo added grimly. We'll need to split up, Becky decided. Evacuation pods for most of the crew. A skeleton team to handle the ship. I'll stay, Takahashi volunteered immediately. Someone needs to fly this thing. And I'll handle the engine overload, Volkov added. Becky nodded, his face solemn. I'll remain with Dr. Ortiz to ensure the disruptor targets correctly. As the rest of the crew prepared the evacuation pods, Becky helped Ortiz to the newly discovered weapons console. Through the viewports, they could see the crystalline armada moving to surround them, the parallel Earth below them increasingly covered in alien structures. If this works, Ortiz said quietly, both universes will be cut off from each other forever. There will be no way home. I know, Becky replied. But at least there will still be a home to go back to. Captain, Luna called from the main console. The architect has broken free. It's coming for us. The massive crystalline structure that housed the architect was now turning toward the Prometheus, its surface glowing with building energy. Becky took a deep breath and looked at each member of his remaining crew. Last chance to take a pod. No one moved. Then let's save a universe, Becky said, placing his hand on the disruptor controls. Takahashi, set course directly for the architect's vessel. Volkov, begin engine overload sequence. Luna, coordinate with the evacuation pods. Make sure they're at a safe distance. As the Prometheus accelerated toward its target, Ortiz placed her hands on the dimensional disruptor interface. Her eyes began to glow once more, not with the purple-amber light of the collective, but with a softer, more human luminescence. For Drake, she whispered. Who saw the pattern first? Becky nodded, his hand hovering over the final activation switch. For humanity, he added. And whatever comes next. The Prometheus hurtled toward the architect's crystalline fortress, engines screaming as their containment fields began to collapse. On the bridge, time seemed to slow. Volkov's voice came through the comms, strained but steady, engine overload in 30 seconds. Point of no return. Becky stood beside Ortiz at the dimensional disruptor controls, watching as her trembling hands manipulated the interface with impossible precision. The remnants of the alien consciousness within her guided her movements, but the price was evident in the blood trickling from her nose, her eyes, her ears. Target locked, she whispered. Collision course confirmed, Takahashi reported from the helm. 15 seconds. Through the view screen, the architect's vessel loomed impossibly large, a cathedral of crystalline spires and pulsating energy. Weapons fire streaked past them, the Prometheus's enhanced shields barely holding. Wait for it, Becky ordered, his hand hovering over the final activation switch. We need to be inside their dimensional field. The ship shuddered violently as they penetrated the outer defenses of the architect's fortress. Alarms blared across every console. Now! Ortiz cried. Becky slammed his hand down on the switch. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, reality fractured. The dimensional disruptor fired, not as a conventional weapon but as a cascading wave of anti-resonance that spread outward from the Prometheus. Where it touched the crystalline structures, they didn't break, they unraveled, their very existence contradicted. The architect's voice boomed through their minds one final time, you cannot stop the pattern. It transcends universes. And then, Ortiz began to laugh, a sound completely incongruous with their imminent destruction. What's so funny? Becky demanded. He's right, she said, eyes wide with sudden understanding. We can't stop the pattern. But we can complete it. With her remaining strength, Ortiz twisted the disruptor controls in a sequence that should have been impossible, her movements guided by insights beyond human comprehension. Drake saw it, she whispered. Not how to fight them, how to fulfill their true purpose. The Prometheus's systems suddenly realigned, the dimensional energies channeling not into destruction but into transformation. The ship itself began to change, becoming a nexus point between realities. What have you done? Becky asked in wonder and horror. The collective wasn't invading, Ortiz explained, her voice fading. They were searching. For the final configuration, the pattern that would allow conscious energy and biological matter to exist in true harmony. Around them, the architect's fortress was collapsing, but not into destruction, into reconfiguration. The crystalline entities weren't being destroyed, they were being transformed. Drake's shield modifications, Luna realized. They weren't random. They were the first step in the pattern. And we're the last, Ortiz said, as light began to pour from her body. The Prometheus and everything aboard it dissolved into pure energy, expanding outward in a sphere of blinding radiance that engulfed the architect, the crystalline armada, and eventually the entire parallel Earth. 6 months later, on the real Earth, in a small observatory outside of Geneva, Dr. James Chen studied unusual readings from the sector where the Prometheus had disappeared. The anomaly had appeared overnight, a new star that didn't behave like any star should. "Find anything interesting?" asked his assistant. "I'm not sure," Chen replied. "It's almost like it's communicating." The door opened, and a woman entered, unfamiliar yet somehow recognizable. "You're receiving a pattern," she said simply. "A message." Chen turned, startled. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The woman smiled, her eyes momentarily flickering with a hint of purple-amber light. "Consider me a bridge between what humanity is and what it could become." She approached the console and touched it gently. The indecipherable readings suddenly resolved into a clear message, coordinates, specifications, and a single line of text. The most dangerous thing in the universe isn't malice or miscommunication. It's failing to recognize when you're part of a larger pattern. "They're coming home," the woman said. "Not as they left, but as something new. Something better. And they want to know if Earth is ready to evolve." Behind her, through the observatory's dome, the impossible new star pulsed once, a greeting across the void, or perhaps an invitation.